Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Good Mood Clinic podcast. My name's Gemma Gladstone and I'm here with my colleague Justine Corrie.
Hi everyone.
And we are doing another episode today in the realm of dating, and this is particularly going to appeal to a lot of the women who have written into us. And particularly some of them who have voiced issues around just some hopelessness.
Hopelessness.
When you're trying to make change, changes, some of them have done our red flag course.
Yep.
And they've started to implement some changes, but they've noticed that, guys are still slipping through the radar, and that they've met them and they've thought, yep, he's different. And then when they've got to know them over the first few weeks, they've been seeing signs of, oh, actually he's quite critical, or, oh gosh, actually he's really, seems to be just not prioritizing the relationship much, or I don't know where I stand. And the whole kind of insecurity thing starts coming up.
Yeah.
So we thought we would go back to basics today and start to talk about how do we get some hope, because a couple of them have voiced a sense of hopelessness. How do we get the hope back, and what can we do in the really early days of dating? And we'll talk about the online stuff and the barriers to that. Yeah,
sounds good. Yeah, it's hard because sometimes you go, oh, he's a breath of fresh air. You can feel hopeful, and then you go, well, actually no, he's not. So it's a real roller coaster. It's a bit exhausting.
Yeah, no, completely. It's a little bit exhausting.
And you could be doing everything right, as well, like you could have made a lot of change as well.
Yeah.
You're still having to deal with what's in front of you, which you've got no control over. So yeah, it is really good to go back to, like, just as you're going through your journey, just to revisit some, as you say, back to basic stuff, just to make sure, just refresh and make sure that's still on the forefront of your mind when you're interviewing.
Yeah. And I just want to clarify, like, who are we targeting this stuff to, right? So basically, you'll know this is you if you tick these boxes. Okay, you're a woman, you are either getting back into dating, or you're dating, you're looking for a guy, and you have most likely got a form of just to use attachment speak, a bit of an insecure attachment style with a bit of an anxious, leaning towards the anxious side, so an anxious attachment style. And you've kind of noticed that your pattern is that you've tended to hang in there with guys who have been somehow withholding, right? Or who have actually turned out to be quite self-absorbed, right? Sometimes controlling, but generally emotionally unavailable. So something about your love template has meant that you've got into these relationships where there's been this real need, frustration, and that's felt very familiar. That's matched your love template, and it's been really tough for you to extricate yourself from that relationship, because you found you've been staying in there, hanging on, hoping, wanting that this guy will come good, that he will see you, that he will open up, and that hasn't happened. So a part of you has been a little bit preoccupied with what you haven't been getting, not consciously, and you've hung in there to try to get those needs met. But really the relationship has been marked by insecurity.
And a sense of not committing, inconsistent,
not knowing, so you're feeling the distance, you're feeling the disconnection, and your partner might be unpredictable, keeps you guessing, you're not sure where you stand, and there's something about that that's familiar, and you've hung in there. And so we're trying to help women, because we've had hundreds of women over the last, how long? I mean, I've been in private practice for like 20 years, and we've both been in private practice for a long time, and this has been a real core issue for many of our clients, right?
Yeah, because relationships cause a lot of problems with your mental health and just feeling awful.
Yeah. So we are all about, and with our Red Flag Project online course, that is a course that is all about prevention. So we call it the Red Flag Project because it's about looking, what are the early markers or the indicators that someone is not there, someone is not available, maybe they have an avoidant attachment style. And the issue is it's not your problem to fix, but you do owe it to yourself to maybe notice these things early often and separate and make healthier choices. So that's kind of what we're trying to look at here with that course. Would you add anything to that?
Yeah, your schemas. So the schemas that you have, you don't notice these signs, these red flags, because they're familiar, as Gemma said. You go, oh, okay, well, this is familiar, even though it's painful and anxiety provoking, I don't feel good. You just stay there because that's what you've always known. So we're trying to bring it to your attention so you don't see these signs in the same way. So you can go, oh, actually, I don't have to put up with that. Or maybe that means that. So maybe I should say no to this person at this point rather than get into the waiting, hoping, wanting him to be different. Get out early.
Yeah, exactly.
People give themselves away very quickly.
Yes, completely. So we're about prevention, because by the time you're hooked and attached and your attachment system's going off, it can feel too late to leave a relationship.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of pressure on it's always been there, but getting a relationship and having a relationship. And so there's a pressure to have one, there's a pressure to stay in one. And we want to, particularly younger women, help them realize that we've got to break down kind of some of those myths and tune in a little bit more to what's actually going to be good for them rather than just, getting someone and hoping that they will change.
Yeah. And it's up to you to make them change, because I think as women, we get a lot of sense of competence from being good at relationships and making it work, like taking responsibility for maintaining the connection. So you don't want to be doing that with someone who won't ever be able to reciprocate.
Yeah, that's right. And there's those two myths that are circulating. One of them with women who are dating women in relationships is one of them is sort of like hang in there.
Yeah.
Kind of a hang in there myth. Maybe it'll get better. Right?
If you just try this or you just try that, or you be like this or you be like that.
Yeah.
He might do what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other myth is I can change him.
Yeah, you're like a project.
Which is often not articulated outwardly, but is something that people think and have in their mind and hold that in their mind and act accordingly sometimes.
Yeah. And I think also when you tell people maybe what you're going through, there can be a bit of problem solving going on too. Oh, why don't you try this and why don't you try that? You know what I mean? Like it's
when they tell friends.
Yeah, like you get this sort of list of things that you might try to get them engaged or whatever, or play it cool, or you know what I mean? Like it's all about you editing yourself, and we're not really thinking, actually, why am I even doing this? Why am I having to work so hard? But I think, relationships are hard work, I think is another sort of idea out there that, you're meant to hang in there and keep working at it.
Yeah, exactly. And how do you win him over sometimes even?
Yeah.
In this day and age, there's still resources out there about that.
I know. It's
how do you win the man? Oh, God.
Yeah. And have you had clients, so they've got those vulnerabilities you described and they've got the sort of disastrous relationship and dating history, and then they find a nice person and it rolls out how it should, and then how surprised they are how easy it is, like that can be, oh my God, it's just so easy. It just happened. I didn't have to, he was there and we made plans and it's escalating and
he kept the plans and
it's progressing
and we're meeting again
so there's no resistance on his part, and so there's no need to work then. And they're often surprised. Is it meant to be? Is this how it's meant to be? Like, is this
because they're not
is this
used to
normal?
having that.
The ease, like just
Yeah, the
it's
ease
sort
of
of
it.
that easy reciprocity that you should have when you meet someone.
Yes, like we talk about, there's always the ambiguity at the beginning and a bit of normal and healthy uncertainty with the ambiguity, but not intense, roller coaster rides.
Yeah, well, he doesn't. It's easy to make plans, I suppose, would be the first thing,
Yes,
isn't it?
difficult. And that's what we're going to talk about in a second. But I think I just want to preface this episode by saying that I think if we go back to basics, we think about these women, and we've both been there, right? So we've both been women with abandonment issues dating. We know what it feels like. It feels like shit, let's be honest.
Complete shit.
It's not very nice.
No.
You get triggered easily. If you're prone to have an anxious attachment style and abandonment schema, dating can be hell on wheels. It can be very uncomfortable. And in order to get a different outcome, we have to challenge certain beliefs that we have. And before we do even the schema work, we have to challenge these, beliefs. And a couple of them I come across is this notion of, but he's not my type, right? I'm looking for this particular type. Whether it's someone has to have all these qualities, like, this A to Z sort of checklist of whatever that must look like, or they have a physical type, or they have a characterological type. And, we've got this sort of, we used to have, and it's portrayed in Hollywood and all this, the cultural idiom of like, for example, the strong silent type is one of them. Interesting, right? And that's got a history all of its own, but that whole idea of, that a man is a certain type of archetype, and that, they've got to have these qualities, when really strong silent type is probably a euphemism for an emotionally deprived, avoidantly attached man.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's another word for that?
Right. So we've got to challenge, because also, so these types are driven by what society tells us we've got to be looking for and how it's projected in popular culture. And it's also, the types are also influenced by your early love template, which we've discussed a lot, in terms of ultimately we're attracted to what resonates in our brain as familiar. And if we have familiarity around insecurity and attachments, off again, on again, people not being available, not knowing where we stand, not really getting that emotional attunement, then that's the essence of what we are going to find attractive. And we like schema chemistry, and we stay in contact with that person until they come around. The problem is that's not going to happen, because people tend not to come around unless they do their own work. We're not going to make them come around, right?
No. Well, no, you're more powerless than what you like to feel you are.
Yeah, when it comes to changing other people.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, like you just have to take what's in front of you and assume that this is what it is, and let go of those beliefs or challenge them and make decisions accordingly. Yeah.
Okay, so let's just go back to basics and break down what we think some of the things are. That if you've listened to us and thought, yes, I'm part of that tribe, I'm your person, then we want you to listen closely to these tips that we want to give you. So you're probably online dating, because that is the main way people are meeting each other nowadays. Yeah, but even so, even if you're not, we want to talk about some of the early things that you want to be noticing even before you meet up with this person, and also in the early days of meeting. And we're going to be drawing some of this material from our course, aren't we?
Yeah.
Okay. So what have you noticed, Justine, like when people are using dating apps, women are using dating apps, and they're in the really, really early days, should we talk about what might be some of the markers of, hey, this is probably not going to go anywhere?
Yeah.
This is a marker of disinterest or unavailability.
Yeah, it all starts because usually with these apps, if we just talk about apps, there's usually some form of texting, you know, messaging within the app that's usually the first contact. And so how that person, how he engages with you even then, so we're talking like the first few messages together, can be very informative about, well, how he might operate generally. So yeah, I mean, we've had all sorts of stories about this, some subtle, some really extreme, but pretty much the texting should be not too intense, should it? Like it shouldn't be like heaps of messages or lots of oversharing or anything like that. But he should be, it's like the Goldilocks effect. It's like not too little, not too much, isn't it?
Yeah, not that and in our course we talk about that spectrum of intensity, you know.
That's right.
Like there's a middle path of someone who's openly curious and interested in you versus the one end of the spectrum, which is the love bomber, or the other end of the spectrum, which is the kind of complete disinterest. So I think you know, some of the things some women have talked about with me, and I've thought be very careful of, is, for example, when the guy delays meeting up, or actually doesn't really want to meet up in person but wants to draw it out with lots of chats online, right? I think it's best to not get into that and to kind of call that really early.
Yeah, so the messages really should quite quickly become about arranging to catch up. Really. Like, and then once you've made that plan, you don't really need to keep texting them or being overly involved in messaging them. Should you know, like really it should be, there should be no barriers to that happening really. And where it's worked out, that's been the case, don't you think? Like when you reflect on people who have had that just right experience, the guy, you know, the guy who just responds appropriately and it's easy to arrange a time, that's such a good sign. That's a really early sign.
Yeah, if it's easy to arrange a time to meet up, and then nothing kind of gets in the way of that happening, because things that would get in the way would be, this is a classic one, this is a lot of money, you know. So basically there's been a few chats, there's a message, and then the guy will say, you know, let's what are you doing on Friday night or something, or Friday afternoon or something, and this is sort of a Monday text, and then let's plan for that, and then that's it. You don't hear anything until Friday night. That, or you don't, or you hear something on the weekend, and then it's, you know, it's fitting in with his
let's play it by ear.
Let's play it by, forget that let's play it by ear. If you hear let's play it by ear, I would suggest that's fine. You can leave it and see whether anything is played by ear, but otherwise I would just go about other things.
Yeah,
you know,
because,
so let's play it by ear is kind of saying, I'm not interested at the moment to meet you, right? For whatever reason, I don't want to meet you at the moment. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what let's play it by ear means.
I think. Or I don't like being pinned down to plans.
I don't like being subjugation. I don't like being pinned down to plans.
Yeah. Like a micro commitment, isn't it?
And if a micro commitment is that scary, I think we're
bad marker.
A little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And I know it's tempting to go, oh yeah, but what you don't want to do is be waiting around.
Oh.
You know, when you've got other things to do, like anything from a yoga class to going out with a girlfriend to doing an art class. You've got 100 other things you could be doing. So we want to be not engaging and playing that game. You want to recognize for that for what it is, right?
And you're more likely to want to wait around and sort of give him the benefit of the doubt if you've had more intense text messages, if you've kind of already got your attachment system fired up a bit, if there's been over disclosures or lots of messages and you've kind of got your hopes up a bit already. And then he goes, oh yeah, play it by ear. And then you're going, oh, and you're still wanting to have that connection. And then he kind of goes to you a bit and doesn't actually want to take it to the next step.
Yes, if you've been texting someone, chatting with someone, like as in non-face-to-face chat, and they've told you all about their ex, they've told you their life story, they've told you about, you know,
their sexual preferences,
or even or the difficulties they've had in their childhood. If they have told you any of these deep, dark things or secrets, or just, you know, then the place for them is in a confessional, not on a date with you. Because they're sort of pouring out, they're using the non-intimate, non-connection nature of the chat as a need. They're getting some other need met. They don't necessarily want to meet you in person to have a real like confronting face-to-face encounter. It's very safe to offload and say things for people that you've never met in person.
True.
So that kind of intensity up front is a marker of someone who will have difficulty connecting with you on a deeper, more meaningful level.
Ironically.
Yeah, ironically. And for whatever reason, you know, that could be 5 different reasons why they're doing that. But we don't want you to focus on those reasons, because you're not there to problem solve them. You're there to get your radar tuned up really nicely. Yeah. So what about this habit of not responding to your texts and kind of keeping you hanging? You heard about that one?
All the time. And then you might have a few sort of text messages that appear interesting and warm and consistent, say, and then they disappear.
Yeah.
And then you're going, what? And then and then if you've got this abandonment triggered, you know, schema, it gets triggered. Oh, so even at that level, you're then got a bit of anxiety around wanting to hear from him again. And then you might be going, oh, did I say the wrong thing? Was I too needy? Did I ask too much when I said, let's meet up? You know, so you might go into that sort of, what did I do wrong thing? But we don't want you to do that. We just want you to go, interesting. What does this tell me about him? It's reasonable for me to have responded and to have asked to meet up, perhaps. He has then disappeared. What does that say about him? Not what is wrong with me, or what does that say about me?
Yeah, because I think it's unfortunate that there's a bit of a perfect storm with, although you're perfectly capable of meeting healthy people who are wanting a relationship on dating apps.
Yeah,
that happens
all the time,
and that can happen. But however, it's also a bit of a medium for people who have real difficulties with connection and intimacy and actually being vulnerable with somebody, right? And so they might be very, very open and good at revealing things when they're not dealing with an actual person. But like we were saying, that if then upon a plan to meet up that all goes, then you know that was about another need he was getting met. He wanted to do that, but he doesn't actually want a relationship or want to connect in a way. So probably needs to go to therapy, or, you know, go somewhere else to get those, not on a dating app. But that's, people are using apps for all sorts of different reasons and experimenting with themselves and seeing what they're comfortable for, or sometimes playing games.
Totally. And yeah, as you said before, it's not your job to work that out. And sometimes they'll pop up again. So, you know, so he disappears, and then you go, oh, okay. And you have the little abandonment roller coaster, then you're resigned to it. Oh, okay, he's gone. And then he'll pop up again. Oh, hi. Yeah, sorry, was really busy with work. That's a common one. I got for this weekend, you know, and he sort of might try and kick off a conversation with you again. Now, I suppose at that point, you could, you know, decide to give him the benefit of the doubt and try again. You could do that. But then obviously if he does that again, then that's
Yeah.
a no-go, which happens more often than one would hope.
Yeah. And I think a bit of a rule with that is that, you know, most people do deserve a second chance, but a third, fourth, and fifth chance, forget it.
Forget it.
So, you know, because it's then we see, you know, 3 times we see the emergence of a pattern. So that kind of ghosting and then resurfacing, maybe you could, like Justine said, maybe you could give it a go once, but you know, if you then saw all these other markers that we've been talking about, then you'd realize that, okay, well, that's, you know, it's not for me. I have to end it before I get too emotionally involved.
Yeah. And, you know, I suppose if the messages prior to that have been quite normal, you know, not too little, not too much, yeah, maybe he has just had a really crappy week or whatever. But if there's other markers, you might just be a bit more wary. Intense messaging and over disclosures and even getting sexual very quickly. You'd be amazed how often that comes up in the first little bit of texting. Trying to sort of hook you into conversations about your preferences and scoping out how willing you'd be to sleep with them on the first date, and, you know, trying to bring that sexual energy into the connection super quickly.
Yeah. Or it's also, and even whether it's sexual or not sexual, that intensity and the intimate nature of chats, they like the way they feel when they're chatting with you. It's not the same as they like you.
That's right. Well, they don't know you.
No, so they can't like you if they don't know you. But liking the way they feel when they're engaged in this kind of stuff is not the same as wanting a relationship. I think that's really clear to, you know, important to point out.
Yeah.
But like Justine said, absolutely, you know, if there's a focus on your physical appearance in the text messages, in the chats, if there's getting too quickly into sexual talk or anything like that, definitely they are, you know, what we would say major red flags.
Yeah, because it's all about them.
Them
getting titillated or trying to work out what they can get from you when they meet up, or
exactly. So you know, I think that the golden rule that is helpful is to say, like we've said before, keep the messaging short. So it's okay to talk and to chat, like, and all that before you meet someone, but don't get too far down that path.
Yeah.
Before you actually make a plan and then meet someone in the flesh. And if there's huge obstacles into that, if there's on again, off again, if there's changings of plans, then this is a forerunner of what is to come, as I guess what we're saying, you know.
People give themselves away very quickly.
Yeah.
Small things can mean big things at this point.
Yeah. And certainly if you've got someone who's sort of trying to just fit you into their already preordained plans, like something like, you know, oh, I'm busy this weekend doing this and this, but, you know, the function I finish at Sunday finishes at, you know, 4 or finishes at Saturday at 4 o'clock, and maybe we can meet up Saturday night or Sunday night. It's kind of like they're giving you the message, I've got all these things on, and when I finish with all that, I can kind of slot you in somewhere. I've noticed that sentiment, when mixed with a few other ones,
is a bad marker.
Tends to be a marker as well.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I don't really have time for connection, but I want a little bit, but all on my terms, and I don't want it to overtake my life. It's sort of potentially a sign of some of the more avoidant attachment styles, sort of managing or protecting their own boundaries already in a way that's a bit too much for a relationship.
Yeah. And, you know, one that we used to see a lot was the person who lives interstate, but calls you when they're coming into town.
Yes. Oh, yeah, classic.
Not a relationship.
No. But it could be.
But it could be,
so
that's the hook.
He might move, or he said he might be moving to Sydney next year, or, you know.
Yeah. And when we talk about emotional unavailability, you know, we
we're talking about, someone who lives overseas, they're unavailable. Someone who lives in interstate and has inconsistencies in contacting you or contacts you when they're coming into town, they're unavailable. Right? Someone who's married, they're unavailable. Right? Someone who's in a relationship, they're unavailable. Whether they say it's bad, I'm leaving, they're unavailable. Don't start something until you have a clean slate.
It's a bit confusing though for people, don't you think? Because with those situations, in the moment when you're with them, they can be very emotionally available. You know what I mean? You can be very connected and feel empathized with and understood and attuned when they're with you in those moments you're together. But then the context means that you'll never get those emotional needs met on a consistent basis. So you're in this sort of lovely, warm, emotional bubble with them, and then circumstance means you can't maintain it. You're drawn out of it, and then you're alone again. So it's that unpredictable inconsistency. And people get really caught up in just wanting that feeling back, so they'll tolerate sitting out desolate on their own without the connection just to get back into the bubble. And it's once you're in that, it's a really difficult thing to extricate yourself from, because it just feels so good when you're in it. And that's why Gemma and I always just don't go there. Like, even if he looks promising, early on and you get on well, if there's anything else in the context around the relationship which means it's not going to progress into a normal committed relationship, it's just not worth it. It's horrific, actually, sometimes, having to see the suffering involved and extricating yourself from that.
So what you're saying, Justine, is when there are clear situational unavailable markers or descriptors, such as what we were saying, lives overseas, just in a relationship, married, already involved, etc. These are clear, or has a significant drug and alcohol problem, right? And then there's dozens of others, but when there are these clear things right up front, or as a newly divorced guy, got a bunch of kids, difficulties with his ex, he's not available. There's no room. He might come back to you in a year's time and say, I've sorted all my stuff out. I'm available.
Good to go.
Go for it then. Good to go then. But no, you're just going into a tsunami. It's happening. Disputes with the ex. He's got 3 kids. He's newly separated. Don't enter that zone. Right? This person is not going to be there for you.
No, he's not going to be there
Don't
for
kid
you.
yourself that they are going to be there for you. They're not, right? Expend your time investing in people who are ready for you. Not
start line with you.
Yeah, not people who are going to be only able, just by virtue of their situation, to give you the crumbs.
Crumbs.
Think about it, right? But he's a lovely guy. Yeah, it could be all a lovely guy.
And it's so amazing. He listens to me when we're together, and we have such good conversations. I really think we would get along really well. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure you do get on really well. That may all be true, but it's just torturous. It's so torturous if you can't actually end up together, if it can't just progress through, all the natural relationship milestones because of the context you're in or he's in.
Totally. Yeah, and that's hard because you don't, if it feels good, you want to progress with it, but not all things that feel good are good for us.
Very true.
So it's like, gosh, we just sound like we're just giving some sort of lecture, Justine.
We kind of are.
We kind of are. We've gone on a lecture rant. But yeah, all these things are useful. Slow down. So when you're trying to, I suppose we want to say, look, there is hope. You can change these patterns. You can change the pattern of getting involved with someone who's not good for you, or who's not going to be there for you. You can change that. But we need to really go in
eyes wide open and giving yourself permission to be the one that says, is this right for me? You know, not am I right for them? Are they right for me? Is this going to work? And challenging these ideas about the one person you have in your mind, or this particular type of person that's going to be the person for you. Like I've had clients say to me, oh, I'm just so attracted to musos. I just want someone who can, you know, no. Move out of that zone and look at other options for yourself.
Yes. Think
And
outside of your template, as you said.
it's outside of your template and start to fish from, you know, a wider pond. I know it's hard because, you know, sometimes it's like, oh God, like, is this all that's out there on the dating apps? It's just going to be really challenging and really difficult to meet people, full stop. But think about the ones that you're finding attractive straight up when you visually, you know, eyeball someone on an app, right? If you're looking at this guy on an app and, okay, he's got no obnoxious features, okay, so i.e. he's not at the gym with his shirt off, he hasn't got a gregarious pose with, gratuitous is the word I'm looking for, pose about his body, you know, or he's not, you know, surrounded by a bunch of women. If there's no obvious red flags, right?
What about guns and sports cars?
Yeah, whatever. I suppose we're like, look, one thing is never going to be a flag. We look, a bunch of things are going to be a flag. But yes,
bad bathroom shots.
Hey,
bad bathroom shots.
Bad bathroom shots. I haven't seen any of those.
Haven't you? You know, the ones where they're like,
what's a bad bathroom?
They've like taken a selfie.
Yeah,
in a mirror. On.
Yeah,
you know. So, but then behind them, they're in their bathroom, and it's like
they've got the medicine cabinet open.
Yeah, or like you can just see all the detritus of their life.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh,
yeah. Anyway, it's just sometimes a bit amusing when you see people. Yeah.
But men post differently to women, or they used to anyway, right? They
Yeah.
don't put the same amount of you know, thought about those kind of minutiae sort of things as women do.
No.
Women like painstake, you know, for hours over what photos to put up. Men just whack a photo up. Or what they do nowadays is very common. They grab someone's dog and pretend they're walking the dog in the park, and they put that up, right?
Oh, right. Okay.
So
that's a sort of a...
You have a look on the dating apps. If you can find a man that's not holding a dog, you're doing well. They've got it down.
They know it's irresistible.
They know, get a dog, take a photo. But look, that's much.
Or a baby.
So, or a baby, or relatives or But the dogs, there was dogs and something else. But what we're kind of saying is, have a look and don't initially discard someone who you don't have high, who you don't, that you think, oh God, you know, I don't want to rip their clothes off, and I don't have 10 out of 10 attraction to them, so therefore I'm not gonna give them a go. Okay.
Yeah.
Just don't do that. Look at them and go, oh, are they like a 5 or a 7 out of 10? Okay. There's something about them that's quite appealing. Oh, they look kind of interesting, or they've said something that's a bit appealing, or, you know, and then just give them a go. Like, oh, they're pleasant enough looking, right? And if you find yourself saying, oh, they're not my type, think again. Right?
Yeah, because what part of you saying that, do you reckon? They're not my type.
They're not my type.
Yeah. Such an automatic thought. It's just like an aversion. Your brain going, nah, that's not familiar. You can't go off script.
But we need to go off script.
You have to.
We need to go off script if we want a different outcome. You need to go off script. You have to sort of say, so just in the very early days, choose some people, or say yes to people who you wouldn't ordinarily go for.
Yeah.
Right. They're pleasant enough. There's nothing obviously gratuitous about what they're doing, or their photos, or they're not obvious. There's no obvious red flags. So then if they're just average and they look pleasant enough, then try those ones out. Just for starters.
It's also good just to help you refine your radar as well. Because different people will trigger different things in you.
Mm.
And so it's just good to notice that. It's just a big experiment.
Mm. Mm. Exactly. Yeah. And just don't limit yourself with things like, height, and I mean, you can wear shoes, just don't limit yourself. What did they have? Ages ago when we were on dating apps like RSVP, Justine, women were particularly obsessed about men's level of education and what books they read, and were there spelling mistakes in their profile.
Oh yes, but spelling
If there was
mistakes.
a spelling mistake in their profile, they didn't give them a go. Well, forget about spelling mistakes, forget about what books they've read, forget about necessarily that you have to have the same hobbies or interests. You don't actually have to have the same hobbies and interests as your partner to have an emotionally compatible relationship with them.
Very true.
Right? Values, yes, perhaps, but hobbies and interests, no. We've got our own lives to live. So don't get hooked up on these things that you think are indicative of the person that you're going to have a long-term emotionally compatible relationship with. Think a little bit outside the box is what we're saying.
Be a bit adventurous.
Yes.
And notice the resistance, but do the opposite of what it's telling you to do. And sometimes you need some help to do that, don't you? You might, if it's strong. Yeah. But that's just what you need to do.
By all means, and we work with women, and sometimes it's like an individual thing, we've got to really kind of drill down in what's happening and okay, so you met this guy and you started to date him. Well, how did you feel on the first date? And they might say, well, actually, I didn't really like him. I thought he was distracted, or he kept looking at other women, or he actually was talking about his ex. Okay, well, these are important things to know about, right? And maybe to end it there. So it's the time we waste and the time we invest in relationships that are not good for us, that end up robbing us of really valuable time.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we invest in self-development and experimenting, like you said.
Yeah.
Experimenting with getting to know other people.
Yeah, and just going back to the hopefulness versus the hopelessness that you can have. If you are ending things early, you're not sort of sitting in a lot of schema triggers, are you? With people, you're not sort of accumulating more evidence that you'll never meet someone, or you'll always be alone, or you're reducing the risk of that. And look, it is exhausting, so it's a roller coaster. So it is a bit normal to go, oh, I hope he's nice, or I hope it's a good connection when you go out on a date and you meet him and you go, oh no, he's just not for me for whatever reason. You decide that in a healthy way. That can be a bit sort of deflating, can't it? You can't get away from that. That's like, it's like you when you come into therapy and you can get a lot of very short-term relief in just finding out exactly what's going on. Find out what your schemas are and your triggers and your coping styles, and you're addressing the feelings that come up when they're triggered, and you get a handle on that, and then you start doing things differently, and then you're in a bit of a schlep, like a period of time where you're just having to go through various situations over and over again, doing your best to do things different, and then it's a bit up to chance as to whether something changes or not, because you don't know who's going to end up in front of you on a date.
No.
Sometimes, it can feel a bit sort of, oh God, what a waste of time that was. And you'd have that 10, 11, 12 times in a row,
True. Very true. Absolutely. And it can feel like a full-time job, but, it's got to be a side job that you have, side hustle that you have on the side, that you've been in and out of. But you do have to meet probably, a substantial amount of people.
Yeah.
As well. It is, it does boil down to
telling yourself what it means. What does this mean to me? I'm getting self-respect and pride in myself by doing the right thing for myself. So it can be very self-affirming, even if the dates are duds, So if you go out and, you interview a guy, see some red flags and go, you know what, I'm just ending it there. You can actually feel very good about that. Very self-affirming, and you're putting yourself first. but yeah, it can be hard to maintain enthusiasm. Like, do you find, Gem, a lot of my clients kind of do stints? So they sort of,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. They dive into
I'm going in
6 months, and then they
That's
go,
right.
oh, I've got to get out of it again, and let's
Yeah.
have a break from that, and then they're
Yeah.
hoping they get back in it again. And
yeah. So I think that's pretty normal. It's normal to sort of get a bit of, a bit annoyed with it after a while, and need to just regroup and not have it as a focus, and just sort of fill up your cup a bit and have a period of time where you're not worrying about it, and then you regroup and go again.
Yeah. And so just be mindful and say to yourself, okay, so sometimes I need some extra help, So particularly if you are aware that you have that pattern of getting involved and staying with people who are emotionally unavailable, whether they are narcissistic or avoidant or emotionally unavailable for whatever other reason. If you have that pattern, you probably need extra help and support as well.
Yes.
So we would suggest that you check out the Red Flag Project, which is our short course, which helps you get started into it, breaking the pattern.
Yes.
And then you can decide from there, do you need extra support, what that might be, because sometimes we need to do we need to do the healing work on our abandonment schema along the way, because it's the abandoned part of us that is that's where the model of love that we have is imprinted. And so we need emotional support and perhaps professional support, in helping us implement these sort of changes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. In tandem. Yeah. So it's a lot of it is just finding out lots of new information and ways of looking at what's going on in your dating journey, and then dealing with all the feelings that come up as you're doing the opposite of what you'd normally do. And yeah, you definitely need support doing that, because it's a roller coaster. It's hard. It's really hard.
It's a roller coaster. And from my own personal experience and my experience with clients, one of the biggest impediments, and we've said this many times, is getting into something up front when you already see the writing on the wall, but you hope and wish it were different.
Yes.
And we're saying, don't do that, okay? Because it's not right from the outset. When we have the clear signs of emotional unavailability, or clear markers, and the circumstantial ones that we were talking about as well, avoid those, because you could waste 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years on relationships like that. So when you see it up front, like if they're already married, right? If they're in a relationship, if there's multiple reasons why they can't be with you, and it looks like it's really complicated, don't get involved in the complicated, because it means it's going to be complicated.
Yeah, it will just won't end well.
It just won't end well. Yeah.
Yeah, it just won't end well. So
something to think about there. We hope that's been meaty, get you started, and because hope is, change is possible. It is possible to break this pattern, but it just can be really tricky at certain spots, and you might need some extra help.
Yes.
So if you want to get in touch with us, it's Justine and Gemma at goodmood.com.au if you want to send us an email, or ask us to, if we want to chat on, ask us to chat about another topic that's similar to this for you that you're struggling with.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you. It's good getting those emails.
Yes, yeah. And also we've got the schema chemistry webinar. That would
be really helpful.
That you might want to have a look at, because we talk about all about this pattern in that, and all about chemistry, what that feels like, and how to begin to, to break it. Because usually relationships, then there's no coincidence. We're playing out something, particularly if we've got unmet needs from childhood, or we've got any difficulties with there's any insecurity around attachment. We're going to be playing out themes, and so that schema chemistry webinar is a really good one to help you understand that as well.
It is. It's really good.
Okay, well, it's been lovely to be with you again. See you next time.
See you next time.